Hello, topic is Fibonacci numbers, ruling planets of zodiac signs, and modern physics. This is a continuation of the video, the Fibonacci sequence as a basis for ruling planets of zodiac signs. I want to clarify a few points, expand on some ideas, and show how the ideas that we presented are connected to some ideas in modern mathematics and modern physics. Okay, so in that video, just to review, this will only take about a minute. The basic idea is that if you take the Fibonacci numbers, put them around the Zodiac, starting at 0 Cancer and going backwards, and you reduce them on this 9 basis, you get a sequence of numbers that matches perfectly with the rulers. So you get the numbers. If we start here at Aquarius and go down, we get the numbers 8, 7, 4, 5, 2, 1 going on both sides, and we get the planets Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and Moon. So we get Sun and Moon with 1, Mercury with 2, and so on. That's the extraordinary relationship between Fibonacci numbers and the ruling planets of the signs. Now, first, I want to clarify a few things. I've had over a dozen people send me questions, ideas, and insights. I'm going to share some of the insights and information that I've received from other people, and also clarify a few points. Number one, these 3 questions. Why are we starting at 0 Cancer? What's so special about 0 Cancer? Why are we going backwards through the signs? And why are we associating 8 with Saturn and 7 with Jupiter? What's the answer? What do you think the answer is? Why did Russell Olhausen, when he discovered this idea, why did he start at 0 Cancer and go backwards? Why didn't he pick, some other point? Why didn't he go forwards? The reason is because this is, very simple. The reason is because it works. What Russell discovered is an observation. So it's a little bit, the question of why starting at 0 Cancer and going backwards is a little bit like saying, why is the sky blue? We can come up with all kinds of reasons why the sky may be blue, but first and foremost, it's an observation. Why are the trees outside my window, why do they have green leaves? Well, I could come up with some explanation, or, a biologist could probably do a better explanation. But first and foremost, it's just is. It's what we see. So it's just what Russell noticed. He noticed that if you start here and you go in this direction, you'll get this perfect one-to-one correspondence of a number with a planet. So why is Saturn with 8? Because that's the number that ended up there. It just ended up that way. So it's an observation. That's why the whole system is the way it is. Now, given that observation, that the Fibonacci numbers line up perfectly with the planets that rule the zodiac signs, what do we conclude from that? As I mentioned in the previous video, it may be the way, it might have been part of the reasoning that the ancients had for creating this. It may suggest that the planets, the ruling planets of the signs, are based on Fibonacci numbers. Is there any evidence for that? We're going to see some new developments in mathematics and physics that suggest it is, that there is a basis to this, amazingly. These ideas that Russell discovered independently were then later discovered by other people, and he has also kept up with that work and is very familiar with it as well. Okay, so does it make sense? Well, first of all, let's see if it makes sense astrologically. Do you think Venus, if you're an astrologer, Venus with 5? What do you think? How about Mars with 4? Does any of this make sense? I think most of us like 1 with Sun and Moon. And some of you probably thinking about how Venus definitely with 5. Because the orbit of Venus is based on 5. Here's the orbit of Venus as seen from the Earth's point of view. From the Earth's point of view, it's in a 5-petaled shape. So 5 with Venus, just based on its orbit alone, is impressive. Just for fun, here's a more complex diagram showing the relationship of Earth to Venus in another planet mandala, we call these, also produced by the Series 2.0 software. And again, you see the 5-petal shape. Well, anyway, this is just fun to show you some different ways that you see this in the orbits. The bottom line is that the orbit of Venus, from the Earth's point of view, has a strong relationship to number 5. And we have other videos, by the way, on this, if you're not quite following this, that explain that in more detail. Also, this is kind of interesting. We think of Venus as the planet of beauty, the beautiful harmony and so on. And we also think of the golden ratio as the perfect balance of things. So you might think, well, maybe the golden ratio should be connected with Venus. Well, amazingly, the golden ratio is connected to the pentagram. Let's see here. Here's the article on the golden ratio in Wikipedia, and it shows the pentagram, as a 5-pointed star, and how the line segments, like this purplish color, is in the golden ratio to the bluish line segment, which is in the golden ratio to the green line segment, which is in the golden ratio to the red line segment. It's all these golden ratios related to each other. In fact, the orbits of Earth and Venus are in a golden ratio of 5 to 8, which is resulting in that 5-petaled pattern. So the connection of Venus with this perfect proportion of the golden ratio, the 5, quite interesting. So going back to our diagram, and the fact that 5 ends up with Venus is pretty cool. These are just thoughts, observations about whether this pattern makes sense, whether it has connections to any other ideas. We'll see it has connections to lots of ideas. The Mars with 4, maybe because squares, which is 1/4 of a circle, are action. Maybe the eighths of a circle are action based on a fundamental structure. You can think about it. Maybe Mercury communication, there's like a polarity. Possibly these numbers, maybe they do make sense. But that is not how the numbers got assigned to the planets. They got assigned because that's just how it works out. Okay, so wanted to clarify a few points about Russell's discovery. It's an observation. That observation may lead to various kinds of thoughts and insights. Now here's another question that has come up from people, and also a few people pointed out that there are other points that create these symmetries. Going back to Russell's diagram, if you start at 0 Virgo and you go forward through the zodiac, you'll end up with the same exact numbers. Just pointing that out, just to describe what it is we're noticing. So if you start at 0 Cancer and go backwards, you get these numbers that match perfectly with the ruling planets of the signs. And if you start with Virgo, you'll get the same thing. And that's because it's symmetrical. There's a symmetry there. Okay, so that's one thing. Are there any other points that would create symmetrical numbers? Well, there are 2 other points. They don't create these numbers, 1, 2, 5, 4, 7, 8 in this order. They would create the numbers in the opposite direction. If you use the opposite points. So instead of 0 Cancer, if you use 0 Capricorn, and you go around, you would create a symmetrical series of numbers, different numbers, complementary numbers, you might say, going in the opposite direction. And same thing with the opposite from 0 Virgo if you start at 0 Pisces. Okay, if that starts to overwhelm you, all I'm saying is this. There are 3 other points that create symmetrical patterns around the zodiac. The 0 Cancer is, several people mentioned, is kind of the most attractive. I mean, it's the one that intuitively seems to make sense because cardinal signs are considered to be critical points of the zodiac, at least of a tropical zodiac. This arrangement that Russell gave is also known as the theme of Mundy. The theme of Mundy is where you have Aries in this 10th house, what might be considered to be like a 10th house area, if you have your sort of natural houses, and Cancer rising. So it's laid out like an ancient sort of archetypal zodiac, where they often put Cancer over here. And that's attractive. You get the Sun and Moon being one. That's clearly intuitively appealing, and the 5 with Venus, and maybe some of the others as well. Okay, so just to talk about this, there are actually 4 points, just to give a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on with this. There are 3 other points in addition to the zero Cancer that would create symmetric patterns. It's that's just going over the observation and what the facts are. Now here's another observation, and this observation starts leading us into modern physics. The numbers 3, 6, and 9 don't show up, do they? Several of you have posted this on Facebook, or let me know about it. That it's interesting. You have 1, 2. There's no 3. There's a 4. There's a 5. No 6. There's a 7, 8, and no 9. Russell put a 9 in the middle. Just it's more of an artistic effect, just to say this is a 9-based system. But none of the planets are assigned to the multiples of 3, 3, 6, and 9. Well, you might not like that. You might think, gee, why are we being biased against 3, 6, and 9? I like 3 as a really important number. What's going on there? Well, it's very, very interesting that in mathematics and physics, there's this new idea of vortex based mathematics. I mean, new in the sense the guy who came up with it quite a while ago, but it's only recently that people are working with it in detail. And with vortex based mathematics, the numbers 3, 6, and 9 are separate from the other numbers up to 9, exactly the same as what Russell found. In fact, Russell's discovery is an independent discovery of vortex-based mathematics, and now people working with VBM outside of astrology have also noticed how the 3, 6, and 9 are different. Now, vortex-based mathematics is being used to develop things called Rodin coils that supposedly produce more energy than other energy generators. There's a lot of mystical, wild claims coming out of VBM that scientists are very skeptical of. We'll find out if over time the ideas in VBM are really valid or not. Some mathematicians regard it as just dressed up numerology and more superstitious, and other people are saying, look, we're applying these ideas and we're getting real results. We'll find out over time. But here's the basic diagram used in VBM, where you put the numbers 1 through 9 around, and you get very cool things that happen, such as when you double numbers 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and keep doubling 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, and you just keep doubling and doubling. When you do this reduction to 9, every number, all these double numbers end up in this loop, an infinite loop, and they never get out of it. And in the diagram it looks like this. It looks like a figure 8. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. What is it? 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. Yeah. Over and over and over again. It loops around like that, almost like a figure 8, like an infinity sign. And the 3, 6, and 9 are separate. So I just wanted to point out that this idea that 3, 6, and 9 are different qualitatively is part of VBM, the vortex-based mathematics, and vortex-based mathematics claims to be making all kinds of incredible discoveries. They also notice the relationship to Fibonacci numbers and relationships to prime numbers, etc. So interesting mathematical things, and now they're applying it and making these Rodin coils. We'll find out over time if these ideas being applied to Rodin coils actually work or not. And by the way, this image is from this website, vortexmath.webs.com. Okay, so just to let you know about that in case you're not aware of it, Vortex Based Mathematics, developing a whole area of analysis and study, and Russell's discovery applies that to the Zodiac and finding that the traditional rulers of the planets match up perfectly with VBM. Okay, now this gets interesting. There's a connection of VBM, this new mathematical concept. It's a very simple idea, and we saw that VBM is closely related to the ruling planets of the zodiac signs. That was Russell's incredible discovery, ingenious discovery. So this VBM, if you study it in greater detail, you find out that some of the implications of VBM as you work with it is that there's a torus shape, T-O-R-U-S. The torus, which means donut, the circle tube with a hole in it. Donuts. We all know what donuts are. That donut shape becomes really important, and it becomes a key to creating lots of energy. Okay, well that's pretty wild, except for the fact they make these little coils. You can see hundreds of YouTube videos on rodent coils and people making them and claiming their lights are going on and all this stuff. So that's pretty cool, and we'll see if it really holds up. A lot of scientists are extremely skeptical and think it's not real, but we'll find out as more work is done. But here's something interesting as well. This torus shape, the donut, and its ability to create huge amounts of energy is part of the unified field theory of Nassiim Haramein. Now that is cool. What's so cool about that? The unified field theory of Nassiim Haramein is a revolution in the making. It's one of the most incredible, exciting things going on in physics today. It's sending shock waves through the world of physics. Some people are not responding to these shock waves that much yet, but they're going to feel it. You have to. It's incredible. Nassiim is leading a revolution in thought and physics, and we'll see if his ideas stand up over time. But the thing about Nassiim's work, as opposed to VBM, is that Nassiim has made clear predictions on the nature of subatomic particles that have been validated through observation made after his publications. Nassiim publishes in academic journals. He speaks at major academic conferences. At one conference he was given an award as best presentation at the conference. He's a real force in physics. He understands the mathematics behind the stuff. He works with it. He's one of the creative thinkers and geniuses in physics, and he has come up with, in his model, the emphasis on the torus, the donut shape, the same shape that the VBM people are talking about. Now, to give you an example of the power of Nassiim's model, he created a mathematical model that estimates the diameter of a proton. After his paper was published, a better measurement was made of the diameter of the proton, because the diameter is known within some tolerance, and it's the observations at the CERN and other accelerators getting better and better. The latest measurements are matching Nassiim's predicted size of the diameter of the proton even more exactly. So this is real science. We'll see if future improvements in the measurement of the diameter of the proton continue to confirm Nassiim's formula. But this is exciting stuff. He's come up with a simpler, more elegant model. It basically removes the need for the strong force and the weak force. It's an incredibly elegant model that's working beautifully. The implications of Nassiim's work are mind-boggling, and mind-boggling for the field of astrology. Nassiim's model of the universe is that the universe is fractal in nature, going all the way from the smallest measurement, which is the Planck length, all the way up to the size of the universe. We're seeing in Nassiim's model things fitting within each other, replicating. As within, so without, or as was said in astrology and still said, as above, so below. So it's creating, or has created, Nassiim's model allows for concepts in astrology. The as above, so below is built into the very essence of Nassiim's model. Also, everything is connected to everything else. Nothing is separate. So you combine the fractal nature of the universe with the fact that nothing's separate. It sounds almost like astrology. Also, the torus shape is fundamental. That's the connection to VBM. VBM has a connection to the ruling planets of the signs. So we're seeing how things are beginning to relate and connect together. So Nassiim has said himself that psychic information, energetic healing, can be understood within the framework that he's created. And I will also add that some astrological concepts would fit within that framework. The as above, so below concept does not mean that the rules that we astrologers use actually work, but that the idea of astrology fits within this model. Now, I want to keep in mind here several things. There are many kinds of astrology. There may be forms of astrology that don't fit within Nassiim's model of physics, and his model may at some point be the dominant model. It may prove to be correct. Evidence seems to suggest that it will. If that's true, then astrology could definitely fit within that model. There may be forms of astrology that don't fit within it and are still valid. But these are exciting possibilities, and what I'm doing is building upon what was presented in the previous video, that Fibonacci series appear to be a basis of ruling planets of the ruling planets of the signs, and there are more and more connections being made between mathematics and astrology and physics. What are some of the connections? What are some of the similarities and differences? Well, VBM, the Vortex Based Mathematics, and Nassiim's physics both emphasize that the torus is important, the donut shape. They both have practical applications, but keep in mind that VBM is much more distant from academic physics, and the physics has been clearly verified at this moment. In the future that could be changed, but much more distant than Nassiim's physics, which has made predictions of how the universe works and how things are connected together that have been bared out, and he is publishing in academic journals and making presentations at conferences, etc. So Nassiim's work is a little closer to being, you might say, mainstream and verified. This is just to tell you what is. I'm not saying what's better or worse, but just to let you know what's going on and share this information. Now, how close is Nassiim's physics to astrology? Just to explore this. Well, there's one big difference between what Nassiim does and what's typically done in astrology, which is that Nassiim's physics is close, well, it's identical to academic physics in that you have to make predictions. You build a model and you test the model. And most ideas in astrology haven't been tested as rigorously. Even though astrology is often applied to people and therefore is a soft science, still very little attempt is usually made in astrology to control for selection bias and things like that. So the approach is different. Nassiim is basically doing something that's standard, normal physics, not outside the box, in that he's testing the model. If the model doesn't get verified in the tests, then you have to throw it out. So any astrology that tests ideas thoroughly fits within the approach that Nassiim has and that all scientists have, which is that you test the model. So even if an idea doesn't have a connection to modern physics, such as most classical ideas, but you test them in addition to experiencing them and working with them, which is also important. But if you test them in other ways, that's more compatible with this scientific approach. So, for example, Lee Lehman uses a lot of classical astrology. She's tested the ideas in classical astrology for who will win a contest, like who will win a sports event, who will win a baseball game, a football game, a basketball game. And she developed a report, which is an option of the Kepler, Sirius, and Pegasus programs, called Who Wins. She collected huge amounts of data that's available on websites now. Downloaded it, we imported it into the software, she tested it, and got some confirmation that the formula works. So these are interesting developments in astrology is what I'm saying. There's a lot of astrologers who are not interested in this kind of thing, but at the same time, there's physics becoming more astrological. Physics has become more astrological. A part of physics, the physics of Nassiim, specifically. When I say it's become more astrological, I don't mean that the specific rules of astrology are being validated, but it opens the door. It invites, in fact, some analysis of how the as above, so below works, but it would require testing and validation to use it. So I'm just showing the connections. I know this is controversial. Different people have different attitudes. Some people like things or repelled by them, but this is what's going on. Physics has opened the door and invited astrology into it. If astrologers want to enter into that world, if that looks attractive and interesting, part of the game would be to test ideas more carefully. So I use Lee Lehman as an example of a person who does that. Also, if your ideas in astrology happen to fit within the conceptual framework, that makes it easier to integrate. They don't have to integrate. You can make a discovery in astrology, something that's replicable, observation that doesn't fit within the model. That's also scientific. But if it happens to fit within the theory, it makes it easier to understand why it would be working. So I work in an area that I call vibrational astrology, which is based on wave theory and uses scientific methods like exploratory methods like extreme case sampling, hypothesis tests, and we've gotten very positive results from some of that research. So there's a developing areas of astrology that are being invited into the kind of physics that Nassiim has developed and using some similar concepts. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the work of Nassiim, this website address is an excellent one. There are many videos of him. His website at the Resonance Institute has a lot of information. But if you don't know where to start, this is a good one to start with. It's a 2-hour interview, if you have enough time to do that. It was done in the summer 2014, so it's relatively new, and it's very clear. He explains in this interview a lot of the basic ideas of what he's found and how it's relevant to people's lives and so on. And he mentions that it's compatible with things like psychic awareness, etc. So that's it, my friends. I just wanted to clarify, to summarize, I wanted to clarify some points about the relationship of the Fibonacci numbers to the ruling planets of the zodiac signs, some questions about where that's coming from. I hope I've done that, and also that there are ideas going on in mathematics and physics that are some of which are related specifically to the numbers found. What I'm referring to is how those numbers are part of Vortex Based Mathematics, and Vortex Based Mathematics in turn has a connection to the physics of Nassiim Haramein, in that they both emphasize the torus shape, and how, in addition to that, the physics of Nassiim invites in concepts of astrology. So we're seeing a whole new world of information being developed, the work in vibrational astrology finding results. We've done studies that have shown gold prices changing with harmonic patterns. We have videos on that. We have videos on taking select charts with extreme case sampling, or noticing how extroversion connects with 11th harmonic patterns and so on. It's a whole new world of vibration, resonance, as within, so without, that integrates with physics. A large amount of these new ideas that are developing in observations and research lie outside the domain of traditional astrology as we develop these this understanding based on wave theory. And all this connects back to the possibility that some of the ancient ideas may be suddenly starting to fit within this framework of physics as developed by Nassiim and other cutting-edge physicists. Thank you very much. God bless. Namaste.